Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. I apologize if you hear some fireworks in the background. Of course, it is approaching July the 4th, and my dogs are going crazy. I've got Scout curled up in a ball underneath my legs. So I was going to do a more edited video of this particular discussion, but I thought I would just pan it out in different web browsers and talk about the cards that I'm currently investing in from the rotating sets coming up in November. And for those you don't know, Standard rotates September, November-ish. The sets that will go out will be Oath the Gatewatch and Battle for Zendikar, as well as Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon. And I think right now is an okay time. Usually it will have 3 to 4 months, I would say, on casual cards to start investing in them before they start to go up. And then you have a good year before they really start to go up. So in my last few videos, I explained the whole theory of this. You can go back and check those out for a more detailed explanation. So let's just get on to my honorable mentions. The honorable mentions you see before you. The first one is going to be the Titans. I think all the Titans are pretty good investments at the moment, especially Kozilek the Great Distortion, because this card never really saw standard play, so it is arguable that it is at its bottom, and rotation actually will not affect the Kozilek the Great Distortion. So I'm using a site called EDH Rec. Again, in the previous video, I explained why EDH Rec is a gold mine, because it is very laid out. It's kind of like the net decking for commanders now. So when people go to look at new lists they want to build, they often will go to EDH Rec for ideas or just flat out copy deck lists. So basically, EDH Rec is a very good tool for investors to follow the trends for casual or commander. You can go to sites like MTG Goldfish or MTG Top 8 or Star City Games or TC Player and get a lot of information on competitive. But EDH Rec really, nothing holds a candle to EDH Rec when it comes to the more commander strategies or the commander decks. So right here, you can view it as a card, and this is one of the reasons that I'm liking Kozilek the Great Distortion is it is used in 2,839 decks. And it goes in some popular commanders like Jorah of the Gitchu, which just had a release of the dual decks. And every time something like that happens, people inevitably start building commanders around them. And you can see some of these other popular commanders that it pairs well with. Animar is another big commander, top 10 commanders. And usually I try to look to see if a specific card actually goes in the top commanders. Animar's stuck around forever. Whenever you have a play group, you inevitably will have someone that plays an Animar Soul of Elements. So if you take a look here at Kozilek the Great Distortion, it is flatlined out. Its all-time low is $3.40. It has a price right now of $4, and I can only assume that this card will go up over time. As once you're into the thousands on EDH Rec, that is a pretty good number of cards. This also has a lot of casual appeal. I sell a lot of these cards just to your everyday kitchen table player. They'll come in and see a 12-12 Eldrazi and they'll want it. So let's take a look at some of the other Titans. Emrakul the Promised End I also like a lot, because you can see it is used in 2,651, and I think this is actually going to be more popular over time than Kozilek's, but its price point is a little bit more. And it's also out of Eldritch Moon. I'm trying to figure out which is better, Oath the Gatewatch or Eldritch Moon, as far as supply out there. If anyone has the numbers on that or can give me some evidence on which set was sold less. I know that Oath of the Gatewatch, though, is out of stock. And so when I'm really looking for a set to invest in particular cards, Oath of the Gatewatch does seem like the clear winner. Emrakul is used in very similar decks. You can see Animar and Jorah. It's an auto-include in basically every Animar deck because it's so powerful. But you can see the big three here, Animar, Jorah, Rakdos, Kruphix to a point, and all the other Eldrazi's. This is usually a card. Has a very powerful effect, and you can see that the trajectory of this card is pretty much flatlined after its ban list. In fact, it is at its lowest price ever, at or around the $8.61. Right now, it's the lowest price, $8.50. You can find copies on TCG Player and eBay for Emrakul specifically for even less, because standard players are still trying to unload them. And again, this is the best place to get a Emrakul from is a standard player, as they'll automatically just assume it is banned. Well, it is banned in standard and think that it doesn't have any relevance. But for casual, for EDH, it's a very powerful card. What I also like about Emrakul is just on the verge of being playable in Modern. You can see that it has hit some Modern play in Tron before, and I've also seen it occasionally in like Delirium strategies, like Abzan Delirium. I have seen Emrakuls be played as, I think it was actually Jund, because you can reduce the cost easily by 6 or 7 when you take into account like tribals and planeswalker cards that are mainstays in the like Jund type archetype or the Delirium based archetype. So it might be just a matter of time before Modern does adopt it. Again, something that 6 or 7 is playable, especially in an attrition-based deck that can arguably cast it every game that it wants to cast it. It doesn't pair with Dark Confidant. You don't want to be losing 13 life, but I could see this card see Modern play. That's another thing that I like to look for, is if it is relevant in multiple formats. I think this one does get the ticky mark for that. The next card is going to also be the Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. This card was pseudo-banned. What I mean by that is the card that was breaking it was banned with his Aetherix Marvel, so it's had a free fall since then. And Ulamog, again, is a very popular card in both Animar and Rakdos, and Jorah, and you can see Krufix, God of the Horizons. Any other ramp commander that comes out in the future will want an Ulamog, and you can see this in 5,962 decks. That is quite a bit more than even the Emrakul, almost double the Emrakul. If you can look at the trajectory, you can see that it is still going down, and it's been down to $12, so that's why I don't like Ulamog at the moment. I think actually Ulamog might have a little bit of a resurgence in Standard, as there most likely will be a strategy that can cast Ulamog. It's not just me that's talking about it anymore. It's been picked up by people on TCG and Channel Fireball, talking about how the 5-mana ramp spell that goes and gets 2 lands out of Standard can go get 2 of the temples or the shrines, and then you can cast Ulamog the next turn. So this is why they're honorable mention. I don't know if their price point is exactly where I want them to be right now to be investing in them, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on the Eldrazi Titans. The next list is going to be uncommons that are played a ton in the Commander format. The first one being Zulaport Cutthroat. 6,093 decks run Zulaport Cutthroat. What I like about it is 2 of the most popular overtime cards, Prosh and Marin. Marin is still the number 3 commander of all time. Very, very popular commander. If you play in any sort of EDH group, you're going to have a Marin deck. Just did get another reprint in the Commander Anthology, so you'll be seeing more people trying to pick up Zulaport Cutthroats for that particular deck. The only bit of warning that I have about Zulaport Cutthroat is it did exist in the intro, or the giveaway, the free packs, the 2016 version of the free packs that you hand out at local game stores. So there's a lot of Zulaport Cutthroats running around. However, a lot of those just get given out to people that never play Magic again and end up in the garbage. But this card is very, very powerful in sacrifice-based decks. You can see it, Teysa, Eiley, a lot of those type of cards. Prosh, yeah, Marin. Things that like to sacrifice creatures run Zulaport Cutthroat. I bet Marquesa is on. Yep, there's Marquesa on here as well. Surprised the other Marquesa doesn't show up more, as it's pretty powerful in that deck as well. I run it in so many of my own particular decks, and if you can see the trajectory here from the Zulaport Cutthroat, it's been flatlined for quite a while. Now its lowest price ever is 44 cents, so it's still hovering around that price tag. Another uncommon that I'm watching very, very closely, because you can see 10,399 decks. This is huge. This is when you're in the 10,000s, that is a very, very commonly played card, is the Hedron Archive. I think Hedron Archive will go down slightly more because it is in a standard deck, a few standard decks, kind of these casual, tier 3 type decks. Like it is starting to see play in the Colossus deck, but I've seen it a lot in like Paradox Engine decks and things that like to, Paradox Engine or just other artifact decks that like to ramp into big creatures. So the Hedron Archive is used in, you can see, Emrakul, Kozilek, Ulamog, all those commanders, as well as you'll find it in other decks that want to just ramp out a lot of mana and then be able to hardcast those particular cards. So that is, again, a lot of decks want to use the Hedron Archive. You can see that it is flatlined out. Its lowest price was 25 cents, so that kind of shows me that I don't know if it will go down anymore, and will just continue to go up until it is inevitably reprinted. A little bit of word of the wise, though. A lot of these cards, if you go over EDH Rec and you see even cards from Khans of Tarkir and Theros have already been reprinted in Commander sets, a lot of the more popular ones. So it seems that Wizards isn't even that creative when they create Commander products. They just look at they must have a similar list to this, or even look at EDH Rec for inspiration and print a lot of cards that do see a lot of play. So anyway, just keep that in mind with investing in EDH cards. You need to be very careful around the reprint season, which is the fall, or yeah, usually it's right before Christmas. This year they're doing it in August for reprints. So anyway, the last one is Sylvan Scrying. Sylvan Scrying is used in 5,589, and what I like about Sylvan Scrying is it is a very good card to get specific lands. So whenever a busted land is printed, this is just another way to get it. Basically, every black-green deck should be running a Sylvan Scrying because it goes and gets the Cobble Coffers and Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth copy, or at least one of those copies. And if not, it can just go get any land at that point. I often get like cards like Ancient Tombs. You can see that it's in some popular decks like the Gitrog Monster and Titania. Also, like I said, most green-black decks do run. The thing I like about Sylvan Scrying as well is it is a card that has been very valuable in the past. It's had a lot of reprintings, but it's in Tron. You can see that they play it in Tron as well as some Legacy decks, as it can specifically go get that Tron piece that you need. If you check over here in like the 10th edition version of this card, at one point it had a pretty nice little price tag on it. Got all the way up to it's got $1.35, so it got all the way up to $5 at one point. And then of course it was reprinted in the Zendikar. So I'm thinking the trajectory now, it's flattened out at 30 cents, and it's going to start climbing up just because it does have a lot of value in the modern and legacy formats, and then you saw 5,000 copies in Commander. So let's get on to the other honorable mentions. The other honorable mentions will be the walkers, the planeswalkers that see a lot of play, and I'm particularly just focusing on the ones that see a lot of play but also are low. There are some other cards like Nahiri that see a lot of play in EDH, but of course they're still expensive because they have a whole modern deck built around them. So what I like is Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. You can see that it's in 3,593 decks. It has most of its popularities becoming from Atraxa and Narset, because both of those are usually very, very heavy on the Commander or the Planeswalker cards. And so Jace is no exception on this. It can return a creature to its hand, and you can then get a card per turn off of Jace. So it's got a lot of value in the EDH format. You can see that its price tag, it's the lowest it's ever been right now. So that's kind of interesting. Yes, it could go down slightly more, but where is the time you start investing in this? 3, 4, somewhere around there. You can see on TCG Player there's a lot for low, so that might be something to wait on. Again, these are honorable mentions for a reason, as I think that there is a little more data needed before I'm going to pull a trigger on these specific cards. So I like Jace, though I'm keeping my eye open on Jace. Tamiyo is another one. It does have a little heavier price tag, and it's in 3,163. It's in decks like Atraxa. Tamiyo is actually very powerful in multiplayer, as you can start drawing cards immediately, and then once it gets ticked up to its -7, it's actually got one of the more interesting ults, especially when paired with Doubling Season. So you immediately draw 3 cards and then can cast everything for free at that point on. You can see it is used in a lot of these multicolored decks, and I think that Tamiyo has a very interesting, it's its lowest it's ever been as well, and it has started to see a little more play in like the modern format. I've seen it played in some Bant decks as well in Standard. None of them have really hit a tier 1 at the moment. Could change with the next set, but Tamiyo I think has slightly more to go down before rotation, before you should start investing in this particular card. Another one is ob-nixilis Reignited. I really like ob-nixilis because you can see in 5,162 decks, it's got a really good draw and destroy effect, so very similar to Jace in that aspect. And so it's very, very good in Commander. Once you get the emblems going too, you can see it's in Atraxa, Nekazur, Oloro. All of those have been very, very popular commanders. And it can basically be just thrown in any black commander and called good. It's a budget planeswalker, and that actually affects the market a ton. Let me tell you, as a store owner, when people are like, you'll have people, it reminds me of the Pokemon. I have kids that will come in and be like, what's a cheap GX or mega that I can buy. They don't really care what the card does. They just are addicted to collecting those particular things. Planeswalkers is that version in Magic. I'll have casual players come in and be like, I want a cheap Planeswalker. What's a cheap Planeswalker? And ob-nixilis, of course, being cheap at the moment and very good, is a card I sell a lot just because of its price point. So I think that inevitably ob-nixilis is going to go up for just that reason. And also, as you can see, 5,000 is no joke in Commander. The trajectory is the lowest it's ever been, $3.14, which also the dual decks you can get for even a little bit more of a discount. And why I like ob-nixilis is it reminds me a lot of Elspeth. Elspeth is in more decks just because it has more information on EDH Rec 2. It's existed for longer. It does see play in a lot of the similar decks that the ob-nixilis is in. But what I really like about Elspeth, or what I like to compare ob-nixilis to Elspeth, it was also in a dual deck. It also bottomed out after its rotation, or close to its rotation, down to $4.70, and is all the way back up to 10. Now it does see a little bit more modern. You can see it has a lot of modern control decks are running it, so it's got that plus to it. But at one point, Elspeth was a very good card when it was in the dual deck, and the dual deck crashed its price just because people were buying this in handfuls just to get their Elspeth. And you can see it really bottomed out in this one at $4.69, and it's doubled in value since then. And yeah, so this just proves to show that something that is actually in a dual deck and also was in a first set can go up in value in just a few years. I mean, Theros is not that long ago when this card was in its standard rotation. In fact, it was just, 2 rotations ago? So anyway, I'm really liking ob-nixilis. So now that we're 15 minutes into this video, I'm going to actually get to the juice of the video. So let's get on to the top 10 list of cards that I am currently investing in, and I'll try to justify those from the Commander EDH realm of rotating sets. So here we go. On to number 10, we have the Dragonmaster Outcast. I like this card because it was very, very expensive, and then it was a mythic out of the Battle for Zendikar, and it really crashed the price. I wish I would have just bought every card in existence since this was at its low. It's used in tons of the dragon-based decks. There's also landfall-based decks, as you can see here, Perforos type thing. But what I really like about this one too is we already know that one of the next Commander's decks that is going to be released is going to be dragon themed, and so I just think that people are going to pick this up and throw it in their next dragon EDH deck. And you know, it went and signed their dragon, which can't even tutor it up just because it makes dragon tokens. And there's a lot of things that actually have to deal with dragons that have already been spoiled from that Commander set. So if you look at the trajectory of the Dragonmaster Outcast, you can see that after it bottomed out at $2, it has just gone up. And this hasn't seen much play except for like a Torrential Gearhulk deck in Standard in the sideboard mainly. You can see a couple of Frontiers. It does see play in Modern every now and again in the red version of the Emeria deck. So Ranger of Eos can go tutor this up. And I've used it before in that. But other than that, I don't see it much in Modern. But it just, this card just screams of casual. It's a 1-drop that can spit out 5/5 red dragon creature tokens. You can see this is very, very positive. I think it's okay to get in at $3.50 because this card has proven itself in the past. As you can see, the foil, the difference between the regular and the foil, that's something interesting too. I'm not an expert on that. Maybe we'll have to get a foil multiplier expert on the show sometime to show what's a good one. But I know that anything that's under if it's not a double the price of a mythic is pretty decent, like when they're that low, as the multiplier can take off quite quickly. But you can see that at one point this was a $28 card. That's how much it proved itself. And it had, after it was printed, it started off very similar. It started off at $3, $4 in Zendikar, or Worldwake, excuse me, and just went up, 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 and then here it really went up after dragons were spoiled. So this is a theme they're going to do forever. Everyone loves dragons, and Dragonmaster Outcast does look like something that I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't blame you if you sank a lot of money in this particular card. Alrighty, on to number 9. Number 9 is Smothering Abomination. This is kind of a pick just because it's of its low price point, and it is in 3,300 decks. And the reason why I really like this is in Marin decks. Marin, again, is the third most popular deck. Anything that deals with sacrificing, this card is going to get better and better. So at the moment, its power level is actually underpowered for what it's going to be eventually. A 4/3 flyer, it gives you that kind of almost the skull clamp type ability to it. And you really just start to pump out a lot of cards with this particular card. I use it personally in Teysa, and I have used it in an Eiley deck before. And yep, Prosh is a very, very great. Grave is a commander deck that's insanely popular. So is Marin. And again, if any other commanders coming out in the future deal with sacrifice, Smothering Abomination will be a go-to card. As you can see, it has basically had a flat trajectory forever. It's one thing that's bad against it is out of Battle for Zendikar. Usually I like to invest in second sets, not in first sets. But I think this ability is you can get in at bulk, and what's the worst case scenario? You have to get out of it in bulk. But I don't think that it's going to be bulk for much longer. You can find copies though for very, very low, for 10 cents a piece easily. And that's where I would try to find them, in bulk bins. And just start getting these in trade fodder, and just throw-ins is what I like to call it. So you're sitting down to trade, and you have almost an agreed on trade, and you can be like, hey, throw those 4 Smothering Abominations in. And a lot of times be like, yeah, bulk rush, sure, why not? Other thing, bulk bins. These will be in your local game store's bulk bins. Alrighty, so on to the next card, which number 8 is the Conduit of Ruin. Same thing that I like Conduit of Ruin that I like with Smothering Abomination is this card just gets better and better with more cards, colorless cards that are printed with converted mana cost 7 or greater. And then it ramps out your next creature spell. You'll see a lot of the usual suspects we talked about before: Emrakul, Kozilek, Ulamog, Animar, Rakdos. It's one of the best cards personally in my Animar deck. You can a lot of times cast Conduit of Ruin for free. Go and get the particular Eldrazi you want, find a card draw, and then cast it that turn. It's actually very, very good too if you have to wait another turn, because it reduces the next creature by 2, and you're going to be casting your big Eldrazi. It's in 2,901 decks, which I think that it's just a card that will be an auto-include in anything that any other commander that tries to ramp out big creatures in the future. So the trajectory of this is quite flat. In fact, it's the lowest it's ever been. It's seen some modern play in the past with the Conduit of Ruin. It really hasn't seen as much because of when Eye of Ugin went out. But you never know when like Eldrazi Tron will be like, hey, maybe we do want a Conduit of Ruin because it leaves back a 5/5, and it will go get our one of Ulamog or something like that if they in the future, if they decide that that is something they need. So it's definitely an option for those decks. I've seen them in copies before. So on to the number 7. The number 7 is going to be the Greenwarden of Murasa. The only thing that would make this better is it wasn't in a first set. If this was an Oath of Gatewatch, this would be so far down the list, because you can see this is a 5,758 decks, which is huge. It goes in almost every green deck. It should be in every Marin deck, because you don't have to exile it when it dies. This is basically the 6-mana Eternal Witness. It enters the battlefield, you return target card from your graveyard to your hand. And then it's got like the double Eternal Witness. When it dies, you can return one too. So any sort of flicker strategy, though, it's just another copy of Eternal Witness for a few more mana, and it's got a big body on it. So a lot of green decks love it, as it, especially Marin. Any deck that goes in Marin is always going to be high on my list. And I've run it in Animar. I'm surprised there's not more. Yep, Animar's here. Rashmi. I think I have a copy of it in Momor Vig as well, as just it's a great way to interact with your own graveyard. Any sort of other flicker-based strategy too is great with Greenwarden and Murasa, like Restoration Angels, things like that. Again, it's just the big brother to Eternal Witness, which Eternal Witness is actually one of the most played cards in the format. So here's Eternal Witness. As you can see, it is in 33,000 decks. So just give you a little perspective over time. If the more people play Greenwarden Murasa, the more people are like, oh, I should put that in my deck. And that's a lot of times what it takes. It just takes other people playing it, and then it starts to spread like wildfire in EDH. So anyway, the trajectory of this is the lowest it's ever been. It doesn't currently see much standard play. I've seen this in Modern before as a top end card, but of course it's usually not something that they run. Absent lists, I wouldn't fault them. Usually 6 mana is something you gotta really justify playing in Commander, but it's definitely a very, very good card in Commander. So on to the $1 I think is perfect for a Mythic. Mythics usually do flatten out at $1, and this card, if this starts to see the 5,000 pressure, I think it's going to start outstretching the supply for it. On to the next card. This card would be way higher up in my list because it has a whopping 10,969. But the price point and the first set and the fact that it was a promo, I believe it was the game day promo, a lot of those factor in, and that's why I'm putting Anguished Unmaking at 6, is you can see that it's run in Atraxa, Loro, a lot of the usual suspects, Brea, Kalia, those type of cards that are insanely popular in Commander. But you can see that it already is at a higher price point. Like here was probably the time to get into it. I think that it probably still does have a double up within the next year or two. But it's also, to me, it's really, really on something that could be reprinted easily. It has a very generic name, even though it does have kind of like a storyline thing. Anguished Unmaking is something that, it's a generic name. It can easily be thrown in with different flavor text and different art. It doesn't need to have to represent Sorin killing Avacyn. So the price point is a little bit, I'm a little bit queasy in investing in this. It does see a little bit of play in Modern and does see some play in Standard, but usually is one-ofs or sideboards. And so that will relieve a little bit of pressure and it might flatline here. But again, I won't fault either way. If this is something that you personally wouldn't want to invest in, I can see the reasons why, but I could also see this being a very good gamble to go all in on, because you never know when this card will actually see play in like a Death Shadow version of like the white version, because it also does 3 damage and exiles anything, and that's pretty powerful in that type of archetype. So really, really liking Anguished Unmaking. It's something I'm going to keep my eye on before I think I might have some time before I pull the trigger. I'm really expecting a flat line, maybe a slight dip at rotation. On to the number 5. Number 5 is Odric, the Lunarch Marshal. It tends to be a pretty popular commander at 372 decks, as well as it's a very popular card at 3,705. Again, this is in the first set, so if it was in the second set, I'd like it a lot more. But this card just gets more flavorful and better and better and better as time goes on. Casual players love it. And it is in Atraxa because it will give all your creatures Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink at the beginning of your combat. So the more cards that are printed, the more cards with multiple abilities on it, especially commanders with multiple abilities on it, the more people are going to just chuck Odric in that deck. So I like these type of cards. I like ones that haven't reached their potentials yet, that aren't like capped at their power level, that get better with the more busted cards printed that pair with it. So Odric, the main reason I like it, it's got this price point at 80 cents. It's also got this trajectory that's going up, and it's independent of Standard. As you can see, that it has no recent decks in Standard. I've played it with the Hangerback, or the Walking Ballista deck. It was super fun, but just too janky to really make it worthwhile. So I think this is good news. Any card that's already starting to do this shows that there is a lot of pressure from casual. Otherwise, it wouldn't do this. This would be a bulk rare, and it'd be a bulk rare, and it'd be a long time before it went up. So I'm liking this. It's a good sign. If you can find it for 50 cents or less, or even in bulk bins, which is something that is reasonable, I highly suggest picking these up. Alrighty, so on to the next card, on to number 4, where we're getting into some juicy stuff, is a Mythic in a second set. I really like this card, which is Mind's Dilation, because it just screams Commander. It just screams Omniscience. It screams something that is begging to be broken. Whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. There are so many people, cough, cough, Zach. He didn't react. Zach's in the background here. That love to use other people's cards to kill them. So Zach has an unhealthy obsession with Ashiok, because Ashiok kills your opponent by using their cards against them. There are a lot of those players, they love that card. So Mind's Dilation, I guarantee that's one of the reasons why it has such a popular following in Commander. You can see that it's used in a lot of the more blue rampy type decks. Narset and Jorah and Maelstrom Wanderer, probably these are decks that want the card because they have ways to cheat it out, and Yidris as well. Some pressure from Yidris. Yidris might be the next flavor of the week because people are starting to know the power level. It's been just overshadowed by Atraxa and the Brea, but I think it's just a matter of time before this one becomes another popular commander. You can still find, this is one of the few commander ones you can still find it like the Walmarts for cheap and whatnot. So Mind Dilation is really good, and what I like about this card is look at that beautiful trajectory. Its lowest was 99 cents. It's already up to $1.69. This has had no whatever this UR control. This has had no standard play whatsoever. This is not a standard that has made this card go up even bump up a little bit. So yes, 99 cents was the best place to get on this, but I think the 69% increase is still, this is a good sign. We really know that it's going to go up in value over time. Yes, it could be reprinted to Commander and supplemental products, but it's a Mythic. It's hard to just chuck into anything. So this is where it starts to get juicy, is when we're into, the top 4 here. Speaking of number 3, which is very juicy, which is going to be the Felidar Sovereign, has a 3,929. Goes in any deck. I sell these like hotcakes at my store. Any sort of white life gain deck runs the Felidar Sovereign because it's just an I win button in EDH. So once you have 40 or more life, you have ways to flash this in, you can win the game. Goes in Loro, Karlov, Eiley. People have started to put it in plenty of other life gain decks that I've seen it in. And the thing I like about this card the most, though, is it's proven itself in the past. So you can see that its trajectory is pretty flat here. But if you go back to old school Zendikar, this card got insanely expensive at one point. So it was a Mythic, so that was something that is actually important. Because since it is a Mythic, the supply of this isn't really interfering with being a double printed card. So it went up all the way to $11 at one point, getting it in a bulk rare price in Battle for Zendikar. I think this is going to be a $3, $4 card within a few years. I just think that it's kind of a staple in all those life gain decks. There will always be more life gain. Wizards isn't the most creative company ever, especially when it comes to Commander. They're going to beat it to death. I guarantee that within a few years, they're going to print some more life gain commanders, and this card is just going to be chucked in it. And getting in at 50 cents at basically its lowest. I'm sure you can find this for even cheaper. Yeah, there's copies of it on eBay and TCG. I'm sure you can get sets of it for 10 cents a piece. This is just a card that I think will prove itself again over time and have a double up, triple up, quadruple up. Yeah, $2, $3, $4 I think is very reasonable over time for the Felidar Sovereign. Alrighty, so now we're on to 2 cards these are 2 that I actually have sunk money in. So I can prove it by I bring up my TCG player history. These 2 I like the most. And the first being is Geier Reach Sanitarium, or Geier. How do you say this card? Geier? Anyway, this is a land. I love lands, and who cares about the legendary? Because everything's legendary in Commander. But legendary actually is good because you can go tutor up with the what's the legendary commander that can do so. I guess they don't run it. I can't think of it. The green-white one. But anyway, this is a card that did spike a lot because of Leovold, but it also is played in like Nekazar. The Leovold banning will hurt this a lot because you can see a lot of these copies were probably just chucked in Leovold. But this is just a card with an upside with any sort of discard. So Noth, I really love it. Noth and Nekazar's a very, very popular commander. Anything that utilizes your opponent's graveyard is going to also be a reason for the Geier Reach Sanitarium. And that is the main reason why I'm sinking money into this card. One is it's incredibly low at the moment at 65 cents. It's arguably its lowest price it's ever going to be. But the main reason is 2 of the popular commanders coming out are going to want this card. The Locust God and the Scarab God. It synergizes perfectly with both of them. The Locust God, each time you draw a card, you put a 1/1 Locust. So this is a land that can draw you a card. It's going to go in there. They'd be crazy not to throw this in. I'd love to hear some justification of why you would not want this. It's just a kind of a free card, unless you're really worried about fixing, which in Commander is not hard. that will just be another way to activate your Locust God to get you another insect. Whereas in the Scarab God, it's going to give you a lot of options, because the Scarab God doesn't care whose graveyard. It's going to be getting cards from graveyards. So this is effectively looting all of your opponents, and of course they have the option to discard a particular card, but early on, I mean, sometimes they have no better option but to loot. It's just going to somewhere around the line. Plus, you can loot yourself, and it's something that the Scarab God will want. So any self-looting, so I'm thinking what, the Duretti is going to be in here. Whoops, looking down at, was Duretti going to be one of the, yep, Duretti, Scrap Savant is going to be in there. Yep, just and Giraffe, Noth, yeah, because it utilizes discard. Marin, absolutely. Yeah, Niv Mizzet was there. All of those type of Gitrog, all of those cards, any card in the future that wants to be discarding and drawing and anything to do with graveyards, this can be an auto include. This is just too low for a card with this type of ability. I think it has seen play. Okay, so see some Frontier play, but it has seen play in Modern from time to time, I do believe. But yeah, it's just easy to splash this in almost anywhere. Alrighty, so drum roll, please. Oh, so yeah, I like targeting this at 50 cents and below. I think that's pretty. I think I got mine at 35 cents a piece. I'll have to check my history. I think I bought in a 20, 25. What I think, maybe it's like $20 worth of these cards. I can't remember. I'll bring it up one of these times. But this to me is just the Dove Saduz. It's a second set too, which is really, really important. I wouldn't value it as high if it was a first set. All right, so on to the number one. Someone correctly guessed it in the comment section of the last video. This is the Zendikar Resurgence. 6,884 decks. And what really put me over the top is I checked my own inventory here at Gonro Games. This is, I know, a card we had piles of just when the competitive cards traded these in after pre-releases and drafts. Like, that's the first, you get a huge wave of cards after this set comes out from the competitive players, and we have none left. All of our commander players have bought them out. There is one particular person that he has bought one for every one of his green decks, and this is Zendikar Resurgence. Crewfix, of course, Omnath, they're very, very popular. Maelstrom Wanderer. This is a way to double up your own mana, as well as whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. So it's a 2-for-1 in one card. So does everything green wants to do. Draw a card off creatures and double your mana. People are even playing an Animar. I don't suggest it being an Animar player myself, but it probably is a decent option if you can get up to 7 mana, because then you'll have a ton of mana to cast anything later on. I guess it could be an alternate if they've taken care of Animar. You can just cast a bunch of them. But this is quite quick. In fact, it's as far as colored cards are concerned, this is the second highest. So it's Hedron Archive and Anguished Unmaking, I believe, are the only cards that are higher up on the list of how many decks they've been in than the Zendikar Resurgence. So what I kind of do like about this too is it didn't have any of these number one commanders that it was put in. I mean, no Atraxa, no Brea. It's just found a good spread of commanders. So getting in on at 70 cents, I think, is pretty good. I've already dumped $70, I would say, in Zendikar Resurgence. So I'm this last spike here, or right here. Yep, this last couple spike, 69 cents to 70 cents was me. But anyway, you can still find some copies. I think I bought 68 cents and below. I was targeting about 63, I believe, and so most of the copies around there, because again, this goes an average price, and it's not too high from its lowest price here. I think that this is by far the biggest This is going to be a winner within a few years. This, again, just screams Commander. The one thing that I can warn is this does say reprint all over it. Like, if it does become popular, Wizards will throw this in a lot of supplemental products. But if it does happen to miss those, this card can easily have a quadruple up within the next 2 years, and go from a 70-cent card to a $4 card. And yep, really, really good returns that I like with this or projected returns that I have for this particular card. So anyway, I know we're almost to 40 minutes. Man, I tried to go as quickly as possible here. Hope this is some good information. and happy buying. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.